Hey everybody, Michael again in the Archangel 15. Thanks for stopping in. Today I have a very serious presentation I want to cover. Today's topic is going to be on Washington Politico's sex corruption, human trafficking, dead interns, and child molestation. This is a pretty big, impactful presentation that could definitely get me killed, because these people are very serious and will kill you. I want to start off with a dedication of sorts. This is dedicated to the many victims of sexual abuse, child molestation, harassment, human trafficking, and others directly impacted by related concerns. I pray that people find the courage and protection to expose these evil people that are behind this. In many cases, these cries go unheard. Police, lawyers, and others do nothing when people come to them. I have a very personal connection to this in my family, but I would like to leave it at that. I can't really go into too much more detail. Everyone knows the DC Politico's sex games have been going on for many, many years, and it is essentially a boys' club. Very few know how deep all of this really goes and how many body bags are actually connected to it. There are many various forms of sex crimes that have been going on for a long time. I will try to cover as many as I can. As always with my presentations, I try to cover a lot of stuff. Usually when I get done, I find stuff that I could have mentioned again, but I have a pretty good presentation here, so stay with me if you can. Let's flash back to 1998 in the heat of the Paula Jones scandal. A great investigative journalist named Michael Iskoff was ready to break a story with allegations of sexual harassment at the top levels of the White House. The magazine he worked for, Newsweek, killed it before it ever got to make the headlines. Subsequently, the Drudge Report leaked it, and the political world was turned upside down with the Monica Lewinsky scandal. We all remember this, at least those who were around during the 90s. There was nothing bigger than this at the time. Fortunately, many people don't realize the long list of others that were silenced and killed and never given the opportunity to tell their story. Not just with the Clintons, but other politicians and people of political power and significance as well. Again, there are too many people to mention and speculate on, but if you know the Clintons, you know that there is a huge list of body bags associated with them and their shady dealings over the years. I highly encourage you to search Clinton Whitewater body bags, and many names will appear, like Vince Foster and other various cold cases as well. From time to time, I engage into psychic investigation. I feel a certain presence of sorts in an eerie kind of way, and I just, like I said, feel a certain connection to certain cold cases I try to do my own investigation on, or things I try to delve into, or like through a mediumship. I just want to, kind of leave it at that. I don't want to get too far into that right now. But I basically figured that I would never be able to use this for any type of good, because the people, like the federal authorities, the high-level police officers, they basically know that the rich elites are behind all of the bad stuff that's happening with child abductions and other things that go unsolved, and they don't want people like me sticking my nose in there and I guess giving my 2 cents, essentially. While delving into my psychic alchemy research related to the Clinton body bags, I was connected to one of these lost souls. Her name was Mary Catherine Mahoney. I'm going to show you a picture over here. This is her. She was brutally murdered execution style along with 2 employees in a Starbucks where she worked near Georgetown. This was just days after the Drudge Report initial leak of the Lewinsky scandal. Kind of a coincidence there. This was in the area of Georgetown. If you know the area, you would know it's a very, very upscale area and has very little crime. It's just not the kind of place where this type of thing happens. There's other various suspicious circumstances surrounding this murder. It is a densely populated area, and no one heard the shots. She was shot the most, 5 times, so it was like they were targeting her throughout this. There are also thousands of dollars on hand that were not taken from the day's receipts. Also, the store was locked up after the murderers left. It's another kind of suspicious thing. Much of this information I got from the Dynamite World Press, and I haven't really corroborated this with the Georgetown police or anything like that, so take it for what it's worth. But eventually, an African-American man named Carl Cooper was arrested and imprisoned for the murders, and he swore he didn't do it. I'm not sure if he confessed eventually to part of a plea bargain, but he swore that he didn't do it. Mary Mahoney was a young Baltimore native that worked on the 1992 campaign as an intern intern there until 1995 at the White House. She was a lesbian and full of life and just happy to be on the D.C. scene. Apparently, she knew about Bill Clinton's sexual appetite for interns. Lewinsky was actually known to frequent the Starbucks where she worked, but unlike Monica Lewinsky, she never got the chance to have a $1 million book deal. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, how many other Marys are out there that we never hear about? There are scores and scores of other interns and people who are silenced and that never make the news media, and I guarantee you the list goes on and on and on. This man had so much money and connections. Why did he have to do this to innocent women? I ask you this. If you think that this is bad, you'd be appalled by the other stuff that happens entirely behind the scenes. I'm talking about little girls and little boys. We all know about the allegations surrounding the Catholic Church, but few know that there are secretive off-site locations where sex slaves and clones are used for the enjoyment of deviant people, mainly power brokers and political players and top-level people in this country. The book I always mention by Jim Keith, Mass Control, is another good resource, like it is on so many other things, and talks about girls that were like 5 to 13 years of age that were taken to these places and trained in every conceivable sexual act imaginable. I mean, very, very just evil, deviant stuff. Some of them actually escaped. Sometimes these people surface later on, and they're used for other things by the Illuminati, or they're lucky enough to just get out altogether. They undergo torture, basically manipulation with drugs, and other forms of sensory deprivation and mind control, and it's absolutely horrible what they do to these people. The book mentions, the one girl that talks in the book mentions that they basically use this a lot of times to blackmail politicians. They try to get the politicians and other important people like judges to have sex with these young girls, and they film it on camera so that they can usually, ultimately achieve their New World agenda through blackmail and have something to, against these people always. It mentions that above the politicians are sective power brokers and global banking interests that run the whole entire show. They typically like little boys and little girls. They will often steal kids just outright from playgrounds, schools, and from homes, etc. In the past I've talked about Ted Gunderson, a former FBI agent in charge of field offices in Los Angeles and other places, and he spoke avidly about this. I really, really encourage you to look at his work, specifically into the Finders. The Finders, and also the Franklin cover-up. The Finders was a CIA cult, that was run by the CIA as a front, established in the 1960s. Members were specially trained government kidnappers with top clearance and protection, and the assigned task of stealing children, torturing and sexually abusing them, sometimes involving them in satanic orgies, bloody rituals, and murder of other children, along with the slaughter of animals. These documents are actually the FBI documents that he, like I said, that he investigated. So you would find them very, very interesting. They mention a lot of pertinent names, like William Barr, Robert Mueller, William Sessions, John DeCamp, and there's other people. He goes into several times talking about how the kids that did come forward basically were silenced by the cops and others. They basically said that the kids were uncredible as witnesses and unreliable, and It's really sad. I'm going to read a handwritten note that Ted Gunderson actually wrote himself to the FBI. And it says, I have made 6 complaints to the FBI demanding an investigation into the finders and the international trafficking of children who I believe have been kidnapped or obtained through subterfuge orphanages and an agency known as the Child Protective Services. But the FBI refuses to contact me. I received 2 complaints from airline employees that an airline containing several hundred children have flown to Paris, France, from Denver, Colorado, and Los Angeles, California. In addition, Paul Bonacci told me about children being auctioned up outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, in Toronto, Canada, for $50,000 each. Children were in underwear with a number banded around their neck. This was from Ted Gunderson. If you search, like I said, the finders, Ted Gunderson, you'll actually see the PDF files. Very interesting stuff. Also, like I said, the Franklin cover-up, and John DeCamp was also attempting to expose it, former senator. These children are then either murdered or sold as sex slaves across, like I said, various locations in a network pedophilia ring. And many power brokers, politicians are alleged to have been involved. I highly encourage you to, like I said, check this out. And he's a major part of why I do what I do. I watched his presentation, A Great Conspiracy, a long time ago, and this had a lot of impact on me. You know, we lack men like this of courage in our government and other agencies as well. And he was right on the ball with just about everything he said. And talks about other the drug trafficking ties into this, and these satanic cults, and definitely will find it extremely compelling. He ultimately is speculated that he ultimately was killed for talking about chemtrails before they were used to the extent that they are today. The Penn State scandal is possibly also linked to the Finders organization. Using my psychic investigation, I had pieced together that the Pennsylvania State Police covered this up for years, as well as widespread abuse about missing children within the Amish community. We already know that in the Penn State scandal, that a lot of children were silenced, and you know they like basically shut them up and pushed them off as being, once again, uncredible or unreliable, and it's very sad. Just think about how perfect it would be for rich elite families to use the Amish for this. For many of these children, they don't speak English, they aren't documented a lot of times, and would never be noticed if they went missing or their parents sold them. I believe the Amish school shooter, the White Oak school shooting, was definitely an MK Ultra mind control victim. I believe the Freemasons are also part of this, and they use the university system, and many girls are brought into the fraternity and sorority circle and taken advantage of as well. They're sexually manipulated in various sexual acts by basically young waspy kids whose parents, like I said, are either part of the Freemasons or have higher connections in, banking or finance or something like this. And in many cases, these girls are drugged and drunk, incoherent, and never able to come forward with allegations, and would probably be threatened or killed or beat up, or who knows what would happen to them if they did. I believe the whole thing goes much deeper than anybody can possibly imagine. I also believe that certain people have been abducted based on their blood types and other desirable traits, possibly for human body part harvesting. My mother comes from AB negative bloodline and had several children that were miscarried, supposedly, and she doesn't really talk about it too much, but our family has our doubts about this. Many of the waspy Barbie doll women you see that adorn the side of these privileged men are in fact clones, or women bred to look for looks and to basically be stupid to not question their captors or the box provided. You all know what I'm talking about. You go to like a high upscale area or restaurant, and you see like just these women that are like very privileged looking. Like, most of them blonde hair and blue eyes, and they're like, it's just something doesn't look right about them. They look like they're almost fake, or like I don't know, like I said, they're basically clones. I believe that these people are also being human trafficked If you ever see anything suspicious or that doesn't look right, you should please go up to these people and ask them. Say, are you being human trafficked, or do you really like this dickbag that you're with? I believe there's a high prevalence of this in the United States Navy and the United States Air Force, and it's been very widely speculated that they have cloning programs and cloning chambers, both underground and also part of massive eugenics projects as well. Sounds pretty crazy, but it's pretty undeniable. A lot of these waspy women I'm talking about, the Barbie dolls, you see them, arm pieces with the Navy people and the Air Force people. And this is the kind of thing that would get me killed talking about this. But at this point, I really don't care. They've messed with me. They've messed with my family enough. And nobody comes out and confronts these people. Another thing they do is a lot of incestual relationships with their children. Sometimes they will have their wife, inseminated with another man's baby. So I guess it's technically not incest to them. They'll have a daughter they'll use for incestual purposes, and it's really sick, deviant stuff. Many of the men of stature also arise through the reigns of power that basically allowed their children to be abused. And I really don't have a lot of information on this, but I just speculate that a lot of people have basically let their children be abused by men who are superior to them, and it's just a sick game. A lot of these abducted children and people that they use, like I said, they'll actually resurface later sometimes, after they undergo their mind control programming. If they're not killed off, a lot of them are just killed off, and you never hear from them again. They're gone forever. But some of them are actually used in the media, or part of just Illuminati propaganda, I guess you could say. Sometimes they surface as actors, and I think a lot of the people that you see that are lesbians and gay, I think that a lot of times they were actually victims of sexual abuse that basically occurred when they were younger. Kind of gets into Freudian psychoanalytics, other things as well. The bottom line is there's a lot of people in D.C. that are running the country that are basically sexual animals and have been bribed or corrupted. I've heard rumors about military tribunals possibly starting to expose all of this. The problem is, if one person's exposed, it will lead to numerous others in a chain reaction that will basically bring the whole house down. Scores of individuals that we thought were upstanding members of society are no exception. They're gonna, like I said, you'd be blown away. I mean, I've heard rumors that Ronald Reagan took part in this, and I'm not saying he did sexual deviant acts personally, but a lot of these people know about this. This would be devastating on a global level. We know that Hillary Clinton is a possible lesbian and has a possible sexual animal like Bill. She has enough dirt to cause a hellstorm in the media. I heard that some of this stuff, if it were to come forward, it would be so obscene that they would never even be able to mention it on TV. And that's a lot of the reason that it hasn't. Do you honestly think that Donald Trump and his multi-millionaire, billionaire friends in their golf country clubs don't do this and don't know about this? Of course they do. I can tell you for sure, because I actually have a friend that worked at a very prominent DC country club, and if the average people knew about the stories that this guy's told me about, you would be sickened. I mean, I'm talking drugs, sex, immorality, inconceivable stuff. These people are animals, and nobody gets to be at that level of power and money without being part of the whole entire system. Ultimately, the truth needs to come out. I hope that these people that are, like I said, I hope that you pray for these people, the victims that is, and that this madness eventually comes to an end. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. God bless.